general, thank you so much to the Centre for the Arts, because it wasn't so long ago that I called Amber and said, hey, can you squeeze us in on election night? And before I go further, has everyone voted today? Yes. Yes. It's the most important thing, actually. And we will be talking about the relationship to the autonomy that an individual and a community and a society feels, but particularly the individual. And when they vote, when they have a vote and they take that step. And it's a very symbolic thing, and there is a connection to health. It's just interesting that tonight happens to be a very significant election night. So thank you for making that step. Shelley, can you? So let's unmute Shelley and never ever not have her muted. I mean, she must not be muted at any point.
Nope, must not ever be muted. Yes, yes, yes.
Shelley, thank you for joining us. I'm so grateful. As you know, Shelley is spokesperson for the NISMAN. Shelley, would you lead our land acknowledgement this evening?
Oh, sure. Thank you. For those of you who know, I have a deep love-hate for this land acknowledgement. You know, that it's 3 paragraphs that I've tried to say everything that needs to be said. And really the gist of it is just to acknowledge the wiping out of the Nisenan people here, and that it has been invisible and erased for so long, and that we are, as a community, I think, as we move forward with all these amazing social justice and environmental justice moments, that we remember the land that we're on, that the Nisenan people, you know, were the stewards of this land for so very, very long. My personal where my heart always goes is all the missing animals and plants from this landscape, and how much it's been changed, so that, you know, the great Uba River was uncontainable at one point in time, that of course now it's filled with its levee systems, and, you know, she is contained for whatever moment this is. And then all the ancestors that are buried here, that are very much in our hearts. I feel that most of them in the recent past, in the great arc of time, died in poverty and in, you know, a lot of bad ways. That those are the things that are important to me. And when I step onto somebody else's territory in their land, those are the things that I think of as a visitor in any place where I go. I try to always highlight that first. Traditionally, that was, you're supposed to be welcomed and invited so you don't get sick, mostly from those dead folk. And you know, the things that you should be invited into somebody's house, don't just go in and make yourself comfortable and eat their food and whatnot. So but really, I think that is the gist of the land acknowledgement that most people can get behind, and knowing that this place is different now. I think a lot of us who live here long for sustainability. We long for these things as community members. We long for community itself. And to know that there was something here that existed like in perpetual motion with nature. Humans had their place in the scheme of things. And I feel us here longing to get back to that, you know, something that was here for so long and torn apart. And then it's all of us who can put those pieces back together and truly be a community where everybody is seen and everybody is respected. The animals, no matter how small, we all need fresh water, fresh air, and soil to live on this planet. Otherwise, we should just, you know, cement it all and get fake everything, which is fine. If you read good sci-fi, they're always out there in the spaceship in the cold darkness of space, just looking for a habitable planet. And we're here. You know, we just, people forget we all come from those roots, no matter where we are on the planet. If you go back far enough, there are these nature systems where people just live together. And so really that's at the heart of the land acknowledgement. I hate the words itself with our written one, but I see it doing its job, like it's bringing visibility and understanding. I hope that, you know, our communities all can weave together in some way where we're proud to be together on this land and, you know, doing good for the generations to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Sally.
Thank you so much. So how this works normally, and depending upon the number of people. Yes.
Sorry, I just realized that whoever got bullied to the front and left their phone in the back. You'd be like, "When I talk to them, like, all right, I was scared."
Fair enough, fair enough. So I usually introduce our team from Nevada County Arts Council, and then we give you a bunch of data, and at the point in which you feel your head is about to explode with data, then we turn it over to you and we have crazy, wild, wonderful conversations that are, you know, with full of innovation and risk and fun as we anticipate a future where artists are paid and we place artists at the forefront of issues that are critical to society. But because we're just small enough within this group, that I think I'd love to know who's in the room. So I'm Eliza, I'm Executive Director of Nevada County Arts Council and a board member for Californians for the Arts and California Arts Advocates. My colleagues here are Katrina and Gianna. And Katrina, Gianna, and myself are doing a tour of 19 counties in the upstate California region at the moment, which is extraordinary. We'll tell you more about that in a moment. Perhaps if we just start, if you could read out who's with us by Zoom today, just very quick, first and last names and affiliation. And then I'm just gonna sort of ask who's in the room here. So be ready.
Yes, so everybody heard Shally Colbert. We have BJ from Sarah County Arts Council. Hi, BJ, Michelle Jewett, and we have Stuart Baker from the Nevada City Chamber, Solomon Basoff, Fiduci LLC. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing that. And we have Jay, he's a local musician. Hi, Jay, I'm glad you're here with us. Noga Wizonski, she's an artist from Nevada City. Dr. Barry Tristman, Michelle Jewett, again, she's from Artworks Gallery. And Catherine Lambert. And we have Carrie Shakerman Green for community rhythm facilitation and photographer. And we have, let's see. Okay, Jay, his affiliation is Orange Crate Media and Arts. And BJ is, she's the executive director for Sarah County Arts Council. Sally Ashton, writer, editor, and teacher. Jenny Brown, she's a ceramics program and art docent from the Nevada City School District. Shally Colbert, she's a spokesperson, Nevada City Rancheria Nisenan Tribe, and she's the executive director of CHIRP, California Heritage Indigenous Research Project. We have Eric Dunn, producer of Wild and Scenic Film Festival, Julie Harden, director in Concert Sierra, Elizabeth Dorbid, I'm sorry, thank you.
You're doing very well.
Interdisciplinary artist. She's a consultant in the art and artists and archives. Rosianne Burke just entering the room. Okay, we'll let her in. Let's see, Jane Primrose, President, Nevada Theater Commission. Patrick Storm, the Arts Council of Placer County. Hi, Patrick. He's the executive director. We're on a call with him today. Welcome, Patrick.
Placer County Arts Council. Great, that's it.
And Samantha Shady here from Citizens for Choice, the clinic.
Wonderful.
And let's see, Molly Joachim, North Columbia Schoolhouse
Oh,
Cultural
great.
Center. Great.
Super.
So for those just joining us, please share your full name, email, and any affiliation you'd like us to be aware of and your title. We'll be adding all of you to our mailing list.
So I'd like to have a show of hands for all the artists in the room. Oh, great. That's fantastic. Any organizations, any representatives, organizations, would those representing organizations let us know who you are? We'll start over here. Michelle, do you want to just?
I'm a board member for the Arts Council, so I'm here to learn more about this exciting thing that launched, and just it's an amazing moment, you know, for our community and for upstate California.
Thank you, Michelle. Anyone else from an organization you said?
Yeah, I'm a artist. I have a show here here
Oh.
tonight, but I also founded and am the director of art therapy for a new therapeutic art program called Art Space.
Fantastic. And your name?
Becky Johnson.
Okay, great. Thank you. Welcome. Wow. Did you put your hand up?
I'm Sally Ashna, and I'm here representing myself as an artist, wood turner and painter and musician, but also the director of Scottish Fiddlers of California. It runs the camps and community-based organizations that yeah.
And I'm gonna just call that out because we're being recorded, Sally, so we have to use our outdoor voices, so we're picked up by the video audio. So Sally is the executive director of,
Not executive director, but I am one of the directors of Scottish Fiddlers of California.
Scottish Fiddlers of California. That's amazing. Okay, yes.
Hi
Hi.
everyone, I'm Nicole Franco. I'm the founder of Catalyst Info, which is a creative agency for transformational experiences and expressive arts. We're also running a community initiative called Rubber Market, representing about 50 different artists and creatives in the community, co-creating this social experiment of what it means to come together to share in the local economy with different forms of currency.
Fantastic. That's amazing. Okay, who's next? Yes.
My name is Bas Kool. I'm creative director of Gearship, where the construction startup here in town.
That's great. That's
I'm
fantastic.
also an artist, designer. And so-
Fantastic. Fantastic. Thank you. Anyone else representing an organization?
Hi, my name's Heather Hector. I'm an artist, but also here representing the Nevada County City Council.
Oh, wonderful. I'm so glad you're here. Thanks, Heather. Okay, you're not allowed to, we'll have to sort of like edit what you feedback later. Only
perfect.
joking.
Yeah.
Tony LeBeau, membership associate here with Monique Strikes.
Yeah.
Sorry. Monique Strike, who's our education manager, and India with the Wild and Scenic Film Festival. She's the director.
So the South Yuba River Citizens League and the Wild and Scenic Film Festival. Brilliant. Thank you for showing up. And you are here too from the Center for the Arts.
Yeah, my name is Anna Mosby and I'm the programs assistant here at the center, and I work mostly in visual arts, whole programming.
Fantastic. Thanks so much. Anna. Anyone else representing organizations? Jenny.
I'm Jenny Durham, the person, the executive director.
Fantastic. Fantastic. What's that?
Business Council's organization.
Of course it does.
All right, then, yes. My name's Ian Price Murphy. I'm the owner of Moxie Bookkeeping and Coaching, and also representing Sierra Commons as a board member.
Fantastic. Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, I'm Audrey, and we're here from Sierra Theaters. So we're here.
Wonderful. I am so delighted that you're here. Anyone else? Do. I was always trying to hide from you.
Well, I give my life to us.
Yes, you do. He does. He's so bad. So just in case the camera didn't catch that, that was Abdul from Nevada County Arts Council.
That is correct.
Okay. Yes.
I'm Andrew Taylor Bosher, and represent I designed the film.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Matt?
My name is Annette Seaver, I'm an artist, and I work at Bernie.
And would any of the artists like to introduce themselves? Because I don't want to overlook the, you're on my overlooking everything. Someone's got their head down over there. Would anyone else like to introduce themselves before we begin?
What's up? Hi, I'm Jory. I'm a stand-up comedian, and I'm also a sculpture artist, and also work in film, acting, and creating. And he's
Fabulous, fabulous. Yes. Well, that's why we're here. So thank you and welcome everybody. Michael, I forgot to introduce Michael. Michael has just begun with us, helping us with communications for the Grass Valley Nevada City Cultural District, which we manage alongside Truckee Cultural District. We're going to be in Truckee Truckee will have its own listening session at the very end of November, but we'll let everyone know. So if you feel like you haven't got enough or you need more, come and join us in Truckee, assuming it's not snowing. At the moment, you wouldn't have a hope to getting across the path. So what is the California Creative Corps? The state has awarded just under $60 million in workforce development and recovery funds from the governor's budget to go directly to pay artists to create awareness for issues that are critical to society. The state being California Arts Council, the state agency for the arts. And the state agency for the arts has said, thank you very much. We're so grateful for these funds. At the moment, with such an influx of public funding towards the arts, as we come out of the pandemic, it's awarded 13 agencies across the state and the responsibility of re-granting these funds, both to artists and to arts organizations who are supporting artists, paying them directly, and to social service organizations who are working in some of the areas that we'll be looking at today, and to units of government. And the idea is that there's a growing awareness of the tremendous value of the artist in becoming more involved in public life and public work in units of government, and so as well as through social service organizations. So we've all known this for a very long time, but the rest of the world is just catching up. So it's an economic and workforce recovery pilot program intended to fuel positivity, regain public trust, and inspire health and safety across California's diverse populations. When I think about the program, the California Creative Corps, the only program that has preceded it that seems to have inspired it is a program that was developed on the heels of the Great Depression in the mid-1930s that ended in the middle of the Great War, the Second World War. And that was called the Works Progress Administration, or the WPA. And under the WPA, which put millions of unemployed workers to work, were 4 programs across 4 different disciplines within the arts that put millions of artists to work. And so the most extraordinary outcomes came from that. And so it's interesting that as we come out of the global pandemic and so much heartbreak and so much devastation connected with the arts and with public life, that we would have this program. Being a pilot program, you know, anything could happen. We hope that we will do so well together that in the upstate region that the state will want to keep funding it and that we'll be able to keep paying artists to do this fabulous work. So this is how California Arts Council is viewing the state at the moment. Each one of these color-coded areas is a region of its own with an administering organization. The yellow bit is upstate California, and it's being administered by Nevada County Arts Council. For about the 2nd or 3rd year, we've been ranked as exemplary as an art council. Every one of those little counties that you see has what's called a state local partner. That's one agency within one county that reports both to the County Board of Supervisors and to the state agency for the arts. So it's a sort of it has a 2-way accountability. So we have to every year seek a resolution from our Board of Supervisors that names us eligible to be the state local partner. So it's one huge amount of accountability for a very little agency. Thank you very much. So we're having a lot of fun at the moment with this. I'm just going to go back. See here how there's a little bit of sort of emphasis here on the kinds of thing the state is hoping that we will focus on as being related to community health and well-being. Water, energy, climate, disaster preparedness, disaster response, public awareness related to these things, water and energy conservation, climate mitigation, emergency preparedness, relief and recovery, which of course, like, we all know that this county is one among many, you know, at risk of catastrophic fire at many, you know, at the best of times, and we'll be talking a little bit about that in a while. Civic engagement, including election participation, so you've all immediately passed the test today. Social justice and community engagement, again, we'll be looking at the relationship of those things to an individual's health and to a community's health, and public health awareness. The state has had to say this, we're just coming on the heels of a pandemic, but what does it mean? What does it mean? How do we create awareness around public health? We all know the sensitivity and the passionate sort of awareness and very individual stances to just the use of wearing masks or social distancing during the pandemic. How do we translate what we learned from that looking forward, and how do we come together as a society, and how do we help through art with that? There are many, many ways of looking at any map of California. There's a big program rolling out at the moment that's also distributing workforce development funds called the California Economic Resiliency Fund, known as SERF. Who's heard of SERF? Anyone in the room? Yeah. How have you heard of SERF and that? Are you working with an organization who is receiving funds to do good stuff with it?
Sometimes.
Yes, sometimes. Okay, we'll talk more about that. So that's one way of looking at it. So when we, Nevada County Arts Council, are going around the state visiting communities, we're very aware of these two big surf regions at the top of California, North State and the Redwood Coast. And I'll talk about that in a little bit. Anyone know what the middle map shows before I let Katrina speak to that? What do you think that middle map is? It's all about the way water flows. I love to say it like that because for me it feels like pure poetry. Whereas Katrina, who's a hardened scientist, will call it sort of a hydraulic map, but it's a watershed map. And it's
That's completely right. It's so fun working with Eliza and nerding out on all the geography pieces, driving across this whole region and looking at different features. She's way more of a geomorphologist than she realizes. But if a drop of rain fell, where would it flow on out? And it's showing the different regions. We have 3 regions in our state of where water flows. There's out to the north coast, goes out to the ocean directly. The Sacramento River, including all the way up in Modoc County, which we already went up to, flows on out through the Sacramento River and out the Golden Gate. And then there's watersheds that drain out into the Great Basin in Nevada.
So when it comes to February or March, when we open up this program for you to apply for funding, we're going to be challenging some of you who feel ready, who might already have partnerships in mind. Artists, social service organizations, arts organizations funding artists, units of government funding artists. You know, think regionally, what makes sense? It doesn't have to be just a political county line thing. You know, it's going to be interesting. And of course, the roadmap. We study this every day when we think, what's the best, safest, quickest way to get to our next stop? And in a way, this too is poetry. It's how communities across California relate to one another through roads and transport. It's also very important for connection with health. So altogether, if we look at the upstate region, we're looking at 19 counties, 374 census tracts, 31% of the total geography of California, but only 4.2% of the population, 4.2%. 3 primary hydraulic regions and precipitation averaging, you know, from 14 inches a year in Modoc to 95 in parts of Del Norte. From elevation, you know, from sea level up to 14,000 feet with Mount Shasta. And then, you know, various economies, agriculture, timber, ocean fisheries, minery, tourism, and energy. And those are just the main ones. But just to say, the upstate region is possibly one of the most diverse regions geographically in California, which makes our work together as we consider meaningful projects so interesting. So I mentioned that we are state local partner with the California Arts Council. We thought with this crazy number of partners of counties that we're going to be working with to support, perhaps the best way of looking at it would be to work with our peer agencies, other county arts councils in other counties who can each support their own populations, each form peer review panels when it comes time to review the grant applications that we receive from their regions, so that they're the ones deciding what makes sense for their communities. So we're going to be working with basically 18 other county arts councils across the upstate region to make sure that we're offering the right level of technical assistance to artists and organizations and mentoring for artists. So the state has given us an interesting but impossible tool to use called the California Healthy Places Index. It's a relatively new tool that's only just catching on even in government, but it's also catching on incredibly fast. So although it was initiated by a collaboration of health folks in Southern California, it's now being adopted in different states. Just last week, Utah adopted it. And this particular tool called the Healthy Places Index essentially is a map which shows the relative health of communities compared to others in California. And we're going to be diving into it. We'll do a live demonstration in a minute. Do you want to speak a little bit about? Let's get sort of burrow down into Nevada County. What do we see?
Well, and you're not gonna, I mean, this presentation will be given to you, it'll be available, so all this information will come your way. But most of all, especially, this is our home space, so it was actually really just fun to do this. But in a lot of these other counties, we've gone on this, we wanted to understand these different components. We wanted to understand where their county seat was, a little bit about the geography, about the watersheds, about the public versus private lands, because that deeply impacts the tax bases they have for funds that are coming in. College and universities, because we're looking at education as one of the indices, and access to bachelor's education. So do they have to leave their county to do it? You know, how difficult is it? The Native American tribes and their presence. And then the local resource groups. Again, this shows we were able to know quite a few from here, not only because we're from here, but also we're really fortunate. We have quite a lot of.
But this is just this is also the tip of the iceberg, isn't it? We recognize that where we put local resource groups at the bottom, this is just the tip of the iceberg. There are so many that aren't listed, and you know about them. But because we're going from county to county, we want each county to understand the resources rather than arts existing in their own bubble. Does that make sense? So this, again, for me, this is just so beautiful and so terrifying all at once. This is a snapshot of our area from the perspective of the history of fire in California. If we were to just back out a little bit and look at the whole of California, or at the whole of upstate California, you see where that white ring is? That's our area here. What do you think it says? What do you think? Does it look like, can you draw any, would you be able to draw any sort of conclusions looking at this map about Nevada County and its history of fire?
Each color represents a different decade of fires and burned areas. How far back? I believe it was in the beginning of 1900s. It's a good question.
And yellow is newer than that.
100 years. Well,
Oh, yeah.
exactly.
Well, I think in the interest of time, Eliza's been.
Well,
pulling
that's no
this up.
fun at all, isn't it?
I mean,
All
maybe
right,
it looks like we're due a little bit.
Eliza's been doing this amazing thing of pulling this up from its Capital Public Radio page and pulling it up where we can zoom in and out of areas. But I think in the interest of time, you were just trying to.
But you also, someone at the front here, you put your finger on it. The point is, we're kind of overdue for a massive fire. So if
believe that.
yes,
Like,
So-
you say that.
So,
Those were protected.
yes, in a way, although we can't take anything for granted. So the larger areas of color, of solid color, show more recent fires, and notice how they're much larger. So the fires themselves are less able to be contained. And there are many reasons for that we could go into, but it's terrifying, actually.
The other big thing in it, the pattern of the size of fires over time. The pink are the most recent fires. If you notice, they are of a much more massive scale, and the green were in the beginning of the 1900s. So you can just see how much larger fires have gotten.
That's basically the message. Thank you, Katrina. Tell us about these maps.
So when we were just pulling up, looking for forest maps to understand, we have incredibly rich forest resources near us. And there's work being done through the North Yuba Forest Partnership that is actually looking over the North Yuba, that the historical snapshot had less density. We know this, we've been hearing about this, right? You know, Liza will speak more with the work with forest fires, a beautiful exhibit that was up in Truckee. But we now have just much denser forests. It's a big reason why things are burning more. So again, how does this enter in as we go forward and think about our community and community health? How might this relate to projects we propose, education? So all of this is all just feeding our awareness of how we can contribute to the most healthy community we can imagine.
And I think Nevada County is what, 70% forest, something like that. It's very dense. So we added some slides in just today in relation to fire and forest and watershed because of the relationship and the reality of us coexisting with nature in our particular county. When we went to Modoc, it was a completely different picture. There are more cows than people. There are 2 people per square mile in Modoc. It's extraordinary. You know, these kinds of things are very different from Nevada County. So tell us about this now.
Well, thank you, sir.
A few people will recognize this in the room.
Well, most of all, I think the thing that makes it quite special up here, we have such an active engagement with the watershed. And the watershed's not just in Nevada County. So although Eliza's been tasked to go to each county and speak about this opportunity, there's also, there are 4 counties that are involved in the Yuba watershed. There's adjacent counties that are very closely related in their forest resources. So it's really just, don't box yourself in with our little county lines.
So if you're thinking, for example, of working on a project, either singularly as an artist or with other artists or in collaboration with an organization, maybe think beyond a little stretch of river, but what does the river system look like as it relates to a regional perspective? We will be, and we'll be talking about this a little later, about the idea of how large our grants are, how discretionary they are, and some of the larger grants may relate to a more regional perspective.
I think the other biggest one on that, if you notice, everything goes out to that watershed point where it drains out at Yuba City and Marysville. And we were there last night, and it was really interesting to hear the community members talk about the opportunities for youth with even knowing ancestry. The sense of how important they are in terms of salmon. It just didn't feel like it's even fostered really. So really thinking as well as our water drains out to our neighboring county there, you know, what's some areas that we can contribute, the huge gift we're giving York Stream.
Yes, and Yuba and Sutter, the Feather and Yuba rivers, isn't it, converge. And in the place where they converge are hundreds of homeless people who have created the sort of alternative counterculture city, not by choice. And this is huge in the Yuba Sutter area. And so with the idea of housing and homelessness being such an obvious marker for community health and individual health, you can see it beginning to relate to a sense of place. And there you have a particular thing that's very specific to Yuba Sutter, where those two rivers are confluencing, I think is the word, isn't it? This is a snapshot taken from the California Healthy Places Index, and it shows the composition of race and ethnicity. We'll probably want you, when you're applying for grants from us, to show your awareness of who it is that we are serving. We have at different parts of the county, a lesser or higher percentage of Latinx population, for example, or indigenous peoples. Over the Donner Pass, it's Washoe lands. And although the Washoe peoples, very few of them live within the county lines, just over the border of the state of Nevada, it's worth remembering, as we did when we recently completed this major project called Forest Fire. We worked with tribal elders on the 13,000-year history of forest land, essentially. So we'll want to know that you're thinking of this and drawing some correlations between health and culture and race. So here it is. Here's the Healthy Places Index. And for those on Zoom, Gianna's going to provide a link to that so that you can either follow along with us or just play with it yourself. Okay, so I'm going to start again with this. I'm going to ask the same irritating question on you. When you look at this map, you're seeing dark blue, light blue, dark green, light green. What do you think the dark green is in terms of relative health? Do you think the people living in those areas are healthier or not so healthy, for example?
Wealthier.
Yeah, green is the money. Exactly. So you might find, for example, that the green areas follow major highways, where there's trade and transport and better living conditions according to the Healthy Places Index. At least they obviously don't know about the back to land movement, but anyway, yes, you know, metropolitan urban areas, greater sort of access to resources, education, etc., etc. But there are some surprises in this map, and that's where it gets interesting. The map that you see as it appears now is divided into census tracts. That's the default way that when you enter the map, you see census tracts. Why is that?
Well, the census tracts are primarily used because they stay relatively constant over time. The only way they really would change is population grows a lot, they'll be split, or if it drops a lot, they'll be combined. But it makes it much easier for comparing data over time and tracking.
Yeah. And just to go back, just to make that point, you can see upstate California. It's not looking great, is it, in terms of the degree of dark and light blues? So the darker the blue, the least relative health conditions exist. For the purposes of this grant, that's great for upstate California. The California Arts Council, the state wants us to be employing artists who are tackling issues in those very dark blue areas. Know that when we go into the map and we explore it in this dynamic way, you can find pockets of dark blue, even in the green, in the light green areas or the light blue areas. And you'll want to hone in on that and somehow speak to that in your grant application. Does that make sense? So how does the Healthy Places Index measure health? Do you want to speak to this?
Well, most of all, we're going to definitely really challenge you all to not feel bound by this. This is what the guidance has been, because some of these indices might not make sense here, but let us start first from this premise of these indices of economy, education, social, which is voting and census, transportation factors, neighborhood, which have some things that don't kind of apply here, so cautious on that. Housing, very relevant, especially with changes in California. Clean environment and healthcare access. So all of these show how it breaks up. This is specific to Nevada County, but again, the county as a whole. So this is merging every tract within Nevada County and basically averaging it. So you might have some extremes at each end, and it in itself might not get to the data the specific tracts do.
Right. So I'm
A lot more information they know. Just remember, you're taking this home. This is what's called your cheat sheet. You know, this is sort of a summary of what we see for Nevada County, and Eliza loves this slide. It makes her happier than anyone up here, I'm sure. But most of all, speaking to the quite a big range in Nevada County per capita income, the lowest at 25,000, the highest up by Tahoe Donner at 62,000. So again, that sort of all melds together when you look at that county data. So again, look at look at the different areas. But the thing that didn't surprise me, but it hasn't shown up in other counties anywhere as much as it showed up here, was how much ozone scores came through. And for those of us, like I know I raised my kids here, and it was a really big deal when they were young. We had so much of these ozone, this is ozone caused from vehicle transmissions, 90 to 95% were sourced from the Bay Area. But they come to the Sierra Crest and stick along here, and we used to have to keep our kids locked inside on those beautiful days because we would see that we had horrible air quality. We haven't experienced that much lately, which is quite a byproduct of a lot less people driving to work, a lot less automobile use. So who knows how that's going, but it was reflected in the data. And we had quite a few, all of Nevada County tracks were under the 50th percentile. Didn't see that anywhere. 15 of the 20 were in the lowest percentile. Let me quickly just explain percentile, because percentile is if you are at the 25th percentile, that means 25% of other counties have poorer conditions than you. 75% have better. Or if you're looking at it in terms of a tract, 75% of other tracts have better conditions. So what's flagged right here are where we saw the lowest scores for Nevada County. Housing was another really big one. Low income homeowner severe cost, housing cost burden. Say that 10 times fast. 7.1 is pretty darn low. So again, that's really reflective, I think, of the changing housing costs here over time.
So I like to turn it away from just the very literal data to you, to challenge you as artists and potential partners for artists to think, so what has this got to do with me? How can I put my skills to work to tackle this issue, and with whom? You might be someone that has the vision of how to do it, or you might not have the vision, but you know that there's an agency you can work with that can use your skills so that you can help implement a vision. So when you hear this, keep thinking to yourself, how does this relate to art? It's a very tough challenge. I mean, when we were in Mendocino, we had a fabulous, earlier this week, we had a fabulous group of about 40 folks in the room. They said, we just don't believe the Healthy Places Index. It's, you know, we want you to speak to our lived experience, which this is a classic definition of lived experience, when you're told to look at something in a specific way, and it simply isn't your experience. This doesn't look at the back, it doesn't measure the back to land movement. In Mendocino, that's incredibly important, as it is in parts of Nevada County. So we challenge you as artists and organizations to sort of, we threw it back at Mendocino. We said, okay, you create your perfect map of, your perfect healthy place index in Mendocino. You tell us what health looks like for you, and make it a huge community project. Maybe it's a tapestry, maybe it's a series of documentaries, whatever it is. Anyway, so this is what happens if you overlay. Our designer Beth did this. We gave her this impossible map of, how many tracks? 374 in upstate California. And we said, this is no use to us unless, as we go from county to county, we can show in a snapshot, the relative health within each county. So this is what it looks like. The stripy pajama bits are called, the stripy gray and white. They look like some old-fashioned pajamas. They, to me, they do anyway. Coming from England. Those are called exclusion zones. Do you want to explain the exclusion zone?
Well, any area that has less than 1,500 people in population size, or has a high density of dormitory style living, such as in Lassen, New Susanville, high prison populations there, or sometimes with senior living facilities. So they just don't have enough data to draw conclusions. So they're excluded, but they're not excluded from everything. They're not excluded for.
They're not excluded, and for me, it's very sensitive when we think about like huge prison populations. That in itself, we know that the state funds incredible projects that happen within prison systems, and that it has incredible effect on the lives of the incarcerated, and recidivism rates and all kinds of things. So we're not drawing a conclusion, we're more sharing the tool that we've been given, and then we challenge you to challenge us.
But it'd be a distinct challenge. Getting
Can you speak up, please, so we can hear you?
The residents are part of the lowest common denominator. Built this society. Would it be nice to have our programs with residents? So are these zones that are excluded from the network of funding as well, or what?
Not necessarily, not necessarily. And again, this being a pilot and this being a list, this phase of the grant activity period being a listening session, a listening tour, we're gathering input. What I can tell you is that the state offers very specific strands of funding for very specific populations. So for example, Nevada County Arts Council has an ongoing program in which we only serve the most at promise youth, traditionally thought of as the most vulnerable youth, those who would, if we had a fully functioning juvenile hall, be in juvenile hall. They have heartbreaking existences, and we work with them through a very specific strand of funding. And those very specific strand of fundings are the ones that you need to go after. And I've already shared that we've been given some very specific clues like fire, water, air, civic engagement, social justice, etc. And so that's what we're kind of looking at, but we're absorbing what you're saying as well. But there is money to be had for those populations for sure. Thank you. So here we go. You can see Nevada County, it's got mostly pale blue, it's not so great. And so that's an immediate clue that if you were to burrow down into the pale blue, you're going to find some dark blue, because that's why it's blue in the first place. There's a little bit of dark green. Where's the dark green? Where's that healthy bit of Nevada County? Yes. So, and then some pale green there too. So we're going to be looking at that in a moment. Let's have a look right now. Let's go on to it. So this is the California Healthy Places. So really, something I had to do yesterday, isn't it? I don't know, it isn't working this time. See if this works.
Yes, this is going to be very much. It's going to be part of the government strategy. So we can see whether or not you're.
Gosh, I don't know. That sounds pretty scary, isn't it? It's probably another meeting taking place about that right now.
Yeah.
Yes, but I'm afraid I can't really answer that. Now here I am with the same issue. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to end the show here and then try to find it when I go into. I'm going to go, just go into here and do it this way. Yay! There we go. Okay, great. So there is California. And let's see if we can find Nevada County. You can see the city thing. And as you go in, like more things open up. You can see Grass Valley now, and you can see kind of approximate shape, can't you, of Nevada County? It goes like this. See? So there are lots of how many tracks in Nevada County? Tell me where you would like me to go for this next piece. That would be super. It's absolutely fascinating. We're going to be see this little dark blue bit here. It's it's Kings Beach. At the very top of Lake Tahoe. But that's in Placer. I know it's in Placer. We were just having a conversation with Placer this morning. So it's fascinating, isn't it? And we know that this dark green bit in Nevada County and down into Placer is, tons of second homes, a lot of wealth. Tell me which track you'd like me to look at.
Do you want to do the Grass Valley one?
Yeah, sure, let's do that.
It's 5.02.
Since we're right here.
So not exactly where we are right now, but just on the other side.
And which one would you like me to do?
The next one down.
This one? Okay, great. So what happens is when you click on one of these census tracts, You see how along the right-hand side a bar opens up that talks to the community conditions. That's the relative health. And then these things called policy action areas open up underneath the overall school. So California Arts Council would like us to fund projects that tackle healthy, the conditions in the lowest quartile of the Healthy Places Index. So that's those dark blue areas. And you see how in this particular track, we're only just above that. And so let's go down and see what we find. What are the things that are making it blue? Interesting, isn't it? Should we, which should we go into, do you think, Katrina? Want to go into education? Okay. High school enrollment, look at that. I mean, you could barely get worse than that. So what's interesting is when you're making your case for support for a project connected with high school enrollment and art, you want to go in here and just scroll down and you'll see how this compares with, you know, with the rest of the county and the rest of the state. And then it gives a very clear guidance on the connection to health. Every school age youth should have educational opportunities that prepare them for higher education, a career and a future of their choice. Education is linked to increased life expectancy and reduced chronic disease rates, infant mortality, and other negative outcomes. It's no wonder that more and more of our arts organizations are building really strong education programs. Many take place outside the classroom in nature or elsewhere, and many take place inside the classroom, you know, offering curriculum-bound academic standardized arts education. It could not be more valuable. In fact, Mrs. Grantmaker of the century in the arts education department is sitting right here with us, Jenny. Jenny just scored about 4 different California Arts Council grants into the 3. You're amazing. But that adds to your sort of cachet of other education grants. So that's amazing, isn't it? Let's go back out of there. What else should we look at, Katrina and everyone else in the room? So when we think of Tom over here is suggesting that we approach homelessness. So my guess is that we go into housing. Should we do that?
Yeah.
Go into housing. It's kind of on the edge, right in the middle there. And look at this, right down in that blue area here, low income homeowners, severe housing cost burden. If we open that up again, that little black arrow on the left, it tells us, there it is. So that's a clue to a project there. What does that look like if you're working in, you know, in theatre, in dance, in the performing arts, in digital media, in the visual arts? How are we going to tackle this issue or create awareness around it in the right places? What would that campaign look like? Tom, you're already doing it. What are you doing? You have to speak up so that we can catch you.
I'm interviewing homeless people with CR lectures. And problem
It's heartrending. And I remember, is Susan Davis in the room? Susan created an extraordinary project with the Center for the Arts a few years ago, where she shared the stories of homeless human beings, and it resulted in this beautiful exhibition. It's a really solid programming around it. It was very beautiful. She interviewed you, Tom. She's on the Zoom. Susan, are you here?
That's probably muted if she is.
She's got one. Yeah. So that was a wonderful example of how an arts project can tackle such a specific thing, you know, issue that is highlighted in the California Healthy Places Index. If only you go deeper enough. Yeah.
And our grants, they give it to things that show up on this. instrument, or are they given to people? Define creativity.
I love it. I also love to feel that we all have some sort of divine creativity. I know what you mean. No, I appreciate that. It goes back to that sort of understanding of lived experience versus what we're told we should be looking for. So on the one hand, California Arts Council in its narrative have specifically pulled out things like fire and civic engagement and social justice and water and climate mitigation, all these really important things. And on the other hand, has given us this tool. So it's gonna be a case of marrying how we describe our project with what we've been shared from the state. And again, it's a pilot program. So let's give our feedback back to California Arts Council. And that's why we as an administering organization will I'm always feeding back to California Arts Council about the impossibility of this or that, grant program, etc. And they do listen, especially because we are state local partners. So they come to us to say, what are your communities feeling about this or that expectation, etc., etc.
Yeah, I'm gonna pass the microphone for those that want to speak because the Zoom participants are having a hard time.
Okay.
I'm also curious what's considered.
You can post to
I'm also considered to understand what's art in your perspective, or because, I mean, is it just something that we can look at, or is it something that actually does something?
I don't know what something that actually does something means. So you would have to tell me.
Solutions.
Yes. We've been, the language that's being used is that artists must create public awareness around issues that are critical to society. Even creating awareness is a major step, isn't it? Like, I know that from doing these listening tours, I'm learning all the time. The more we communicate about these things, the more we learn, and the closer we become to creating meaningful partnerships that can tackle some of these issues. I don't want to promise the state that we're going to solve everything, but we can make it go, we can act, and we can work together and mobilize. In terms of what kind of art, you tell us. In different areas, it's going to mean different things. In Eureka, it's all about public art. That's how they got their California Cultural District designation. They have like the most extraordinary array of murals. For that particular community, pride of place is everything. And the visual sense allows communities to recognize each other like a mirror. But in other communities, and sometimes more sophisticated communities, there are other more nuanced disciplines and genres of art that make more sense. And that's where it gets really interesting. So we challenge you to tell us what that is.
One thing, just one other tool with showing this, you zoom out a little bit just on the map, but I just wanted to, there's two areas I want to, again, thinking about our nearby, our watershed where it drains on out. If we can see as it's not very far away, there's a lot of big blue, that's where the Yuba drains on out. So just be thinking of the bigger picture, things that have been really successful here. The other thing is, if you have a particular area that you work with and you feel like you have a passionate kind of project that plays a role in, Eliza, if you show how you can go to one indicator,
Absolutely.
so lower, you can just go and listen. You can always say, go to the left one,
Oh, where am I?
during that.
Should we go up to, it's interesting because I know that Molly from North Columbia Schoolhouse is here. It's, let's look at that large tract in the northern part of Nevada County for a moment, and let's pick something there. So I'm not sure if Molly's still with us, but if you can hear me, we're looking at your region now. And there are two things that stand out as critical in your region. One is education. And if I look at, I'm seeing again, very low high school enrollment. And the other is social. So what's that? What is social? The degree to which individuals are identifying themselves through the census. There are many reasons that a person doesn't want to complete a census because they do not feel safe. how can we as artists create change so that folks feel safe to let us know they are there, and that voice, the voice of the individual, is very important in terms of health.
Hi,
You look like you want to.
I did, I just like really called to share some things about artists that I know of, and like what you're just saying about not being in the consensus, like, you know, artists are gamblers. They sacrifice a lot for their own experiences and creations and travel the globe or do things like that are out of the norm, and they live out of the status quo. And I see that, and they might not be voters, they might not be organizational structural people who can sit here for an hour and look at this map, and they need their basic needs covered. And imagine what a world would be like and our community would be like if we cover the basic needs for these creatives, and what kind of solutions can be created from that place, from food, shelter, water, love, education. And how can we create centers for that aren't just, the Center for the Art is beautiful, and what can we do when people are actually inclusive into those places and they're allowed in to receive a lot of different energy from it. So I see that, and I just want to speak into the field for the rebels and the creatives that aren't part of these maps.
I love it, and do I need to use, should I use the?
Sure, yeah.
Okay. Can you hear me at the back? So
I love what you say. One of the really positive outcomes of the WPA program that I was mentioning in the late 30s and early 40s was that as artists began to mobilize themselves because they were paid and because those basic needs were met, informal community art centers where art could be practiced by more people began to emerge, and all kinds of community centers popped up all over America as a result. It is something that happens. So I love it. There's a definite correlation. Thank you for that.
Like, people have come here for cannabis, and in the same way they came for gold, and they came here searching for other sources of refund energy, and then they use that money to curate their art or to invest in more learning and education once they had that. And so I look at all my friends who work in cannabis who aren't even from this country, or threatened to be deported or don't have health insurance, are here because of a dream and a way for them to earn money, and now that's shifting. So I think that's really where our group here can start to look at that as well. And again, they're not on this map either. So I love all the maps. I think it's really important, and it goes with what Sumner's asking, is like, how do those people and that community of people, our community of people, get involved?
I love it. We'll keep talking. Yes, I mean, tonight is one thing. We've got to keep this conversation going. Claire, were you putting your hand up? She said, hopefully.
Can I say one thing? Have the mic here.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, it's okay.
Back to you in a moment, Claire.
So if I don't necessarily submit for a grant, but I want to make myself available to any of the other things that do get granted, like I want to, as an artist, I want to offer my whatever services I have to support any of these projects as a photographer, designer, brand. Like that's my mission, is to bring my art to this movement, however that is. But I want to be able to know what projects have been funded so that I can potentially be employed by different ones to contribute to the whole.
So the grant activity period for the California Creative Corps will open up for applications in hopefully February 2023, a few months from now. So we've got a little bit of a head start to think about this. And then it will end in late September 2024. So a year and a half, essentially. During that time, after we've received applications and those applications are evaluated and the funds have been dispersed to artists, we'll make it very known. Part of this is to let the world know of the success of funded artists. And then it will be up to you to offer your services to those groups. We've created we want there to be a strong social connection between all of you. We want to create case studies from the projects that come from this. Imagine This is the first statewide workforce development arts program in the nation in terms of its organizational capacity. So all eyes are upon California to make this a success. And when we're thinking about upstate California, we're talking about rural California, conditions that are very, very different from the folks who created this map and decided what data would influence it. So again, it's a lot of lived experiences that we're going to want feedback, because that's part of a pilot, is that very important feedback. Make this more relevant. These are the things that you should be counting or should be taking into account, but right now they're not. So we have to kind of move forward as an act of faith, if you like, use what we've been given and then speak our minds into how it could be made better.
I was actually just stretching my arm, but I'll try and sound intelligent. I guess what I'm feeling is the dissonance between what feels like a structure of greenhouses that we've been given and the actual plants that live in them. And so there's this like trying to fit humanity and the stories of humanity and the traumas of humanity into a system that kind of filters in a sort of bizarrely irrelevant kind of a way, because it's utterly soulless. Do you know what I mean? It's like a soulless map that that sort of skims the cream off the top, but isn't looking at the sort of weird fermentation process of lived experience that is welling around in the bottom, looking quite dank and a bit terrifying actually for an awful lot of people. And yes, it's relevant because it's the filter that we're being given. And so there's this kind of tension between reality and measurement, which is this age-old, utterly boring dissonance between the masculine and the feminine. You know, like the heart isn't here because the heart can't be measured. But what we are trying to measure is, you know, do you know what I mean? So then it's like, okay, this is what we've been given. To most of us, it doesn't mean almost anything. And yeah, it does point to some really interesting things that are how we get measured. And so then what is the actual feedback that needs to be given to the system to say, there are people here and their stories and their lived experience is what actually points to how change happens. And if you're actually talking about how change happens, yes, you could look at these as a set of symptoms, but is that actually the most useful way to be measuring anything? Do you know what I mean? Am I making any sense? There's like the roots of something. You know, by the time it's sprouted into a plant, you can say, oh my God, nobody's going to school here. Why is that? And oh, we've got to get more people to school. I don't think it's about, oh, we need to get more people to school. I think it's about why the hell aren't they doing that in the first place? And how do we dip our finger into that little pot and wiggle it around? And yeah, so there's this kind of like, there's what this shows us. There's how we feed back to the powers that be the relevance or irrelevance and why. And then I'd like to kind of see how the artists actually point to what is really, really relevant so that we go to the roots of it and then can come back with that somehow. And I don't know what that means, but this kind of feels bizarrely like robots walking around saying, you know, they can't see the squashed iris on the floor. And the squashed iris needs to be under a magnifying glass, and we need to understand how it grew there in the first place and why it's squashed. And then what that means. Do you know, just that?
Yeah. Just to be kind of devil's advocate a little bit. And I really don't like talking to people, so I'm a little nervous. But I was looking at this map and finding it strangely validating. Specifically when you clicked on the first Grass Valley 5.02, whatever it was. I'm an art therapist and I see, you know, these kids going in, high school kids, and before I was working in privately as an art therapist, I was working in the schools as a therapist in homes and in schools and with the county. But to see that the low education scores, I mean, it's shocking, but it's validating to me because that is what I'm seeing with the children that I'm working with. And so, I don't know, just to say that maybe there is some humanity deep down if we find it.
And I'm not saying that there's not,
Yeah.
I'm just saying the measures are so, in a way, the measures are also really difficult for artistic brains to climb into, because artistic brains are coming in through the heart, and this may point to heart, but it's not a set of measures that's really intuitive for this kind of a brain. That's what I'm saying. So the measures are important, they show something. It's a really difficult structure to put ourselves in. Well, for me anyway. But anyway,
Jenny has a microphone.
as I said, I was only stretching my arm. I wasn't actually meaning to talk in the slightest.
Thank you both in the front row. Jenny, I was thinking along some of these same lines, in that looking at this as an analytic person generally, it did speak to me in a lot of ways, but I've also spent the last 3 years writing these ridiculous government grants and learning how to take the data and the analytic side and putting the humanity in it and telling the stories through the way that they want to hear the story, so they can, these analytic minds who are grading these grants can recognize the humanity in the story. And I think that perhaps some of the solution is to put the analytic brains like mine together with the artistic brains, and together we come up with something amazing. That maybe it's the collaboration we're looking for.
We're hearing this time and time again. I can't help calling out Claire, who you just heard speak in such a beautiful but dark way. And in such a way that we all understand, because pretty much all of us in this room will be having some level of cognitive dissonance in relation to this whole thing, but the incredible opportunity at last in artists are going to actually be paid for something. But also, like, what the hell, look at what we're grappling with. But Claire is the founder of the most beautiful, profoundly effective organization called Tree Sisters. So she, more than anyone, knows about making data look human and creating humanity around issues critical to society. Ian.
I just wanted to offer so I'm an analytical mind that works with a lot of creatives, and I think sometimes it helps to overlay something creative onto the data. So I would offer, read it like poetry and hear the gaps, right? Or look at it like a photograph and look for the negative space and how much information is contained there. So it's not, I mean, I see so much heart in here, but it's not overt, right? It doesn't mean it's not there. I think it's such an opportunity for the more artistic minds to look and explore those dark gaps and the folds inside, or the poetry of what can appear as very dry analytics.
Just really, really quickly, one of the ways that artists during the WPA period was put to work were to create a series of guides to America. And the most extraordinary guidebooks for each state came out. But one of the things that ultimately happened was that the government had thought that, and had asked artists to create a positive picture of America coming out of the Great Depression. And artists being artists created a hilarious, very dry, tongue-in-cheek sort of perspective of America that wasn't remotely like what the government expected. And were accused of being, communist and socialist and absurd things like that happen now. Anyway, so it's fascinating. So artists can have a lot of fun with these things as well. Just want to quickly go back to one of the points that Katrina was making. If one were to click on education in one track, for example, so there you can see I've opened it up for the North San Juan track that goes all the way up to Washington, and then
up on the northeastern part of Nevada County. If you were then to click through, can you remind me how to do this
Just go
again?
to another track.
Just another track, and immediately you can compare how this region relates to that region in that one policy action area, so education. You can start to draw conclusions, and very quickly regional projects start to make sense. Does that make sense? So don't think small here necessarily. I'm going to click out of this and go back to this for a moment, because we're going to kind of turn it over to you. There was a question over there. Was it you? Yes, Hannah.
So.
So to get kind of technical with you, for the grant, it's for artists. How can arts organizations support the artists through these grants? Do you have suggestions or ideas in that sense?
Yeah. So one way is that, for example, Jenny is the most brilliant grant writer. When I saw that she had acquired 3 different grants in education alone, I immediately invited her to the Business of Art, which is a professional development symposium we led recently, to lead the grant writing 101 session, which was very popular, by the way. Thanks, Jenny. So that's one way. An artist will come to you, a group of artists, or you will go to a group of artists because you'll have something in mind that you feel is relevant and meaningful, and then marry that with the artist, and you'll pay the artist, and you'll pay them well, and you'll create an incredible project together. And the artist will benefit from your grant writing expertise, for example, and then you'll have a fund that can be used for artist supplies or rental of spaces, for example, for residencies, whatever it is. So there's a lot that you as an arts organization has that artists can really benefit from, like space and your capacity to write a great grant application, for example, and then also mentor the artist. Mentoring is very important, offering technical assistance. We will want all grantees to think about how they document their work so that the rest of the world can experience their work, so that it doesn't remain as an insular bubble, and that ultimately we'd love to draw from among the grantees case studies which we can shine a light on across California. So all these things an organization can actually help with tremendously.
I've worked with Michael Llewellyn and Heather Llewellyn on the Forest Fire exhibition. And I think that's one of the ways that we collectively can create projects to bring awareness about different issues. So Michael and Heather worked on proposal and the exhibition for 4.5 years. And Michael approached me as an artist to do the models for the presentation. He got me to work on, he gave me all the complicated stuff because he knew my skills. And I think collectively, all the people that worked on this made it as successful as it is. So we collectively, as artists and organizations, need to think about the various issues that we've been speaking about, and how do we create the ideas, the emotions that deal with all these issues. That's what we together need to do.
We're hearing this a lot. We're hearing where capacity is lacking. How can organizations, whether social service organizations, arts organizations, units of government, department, step in and provide that capacity so that artists can shine and thrive. The project that I was speaking of is Forest Fire, which was essentially Nevada County Arts Council ran a 3-year program to raise close to $400,000 for 20 artists to be employed through original commissions, culminating in a major exhibition that documented the 13,000-year history of our forests in collaboration with the local tribe, the Washoe. So, I mean, it's the sort of project that would be perfect. This is precisely the kind of project that would be well suited for a California Creative Core. So let's go back just a moment, because we were resting on a slide. Here we go. Great. So these are the questions we're thinking of right now.
Remember, this is a listening tour. We wanna-
Exactly. So shut up talking, Eliza.
No, give us no ideas. So if you don't see something there, tell us.
We're thinking at the moment, how do we apportion the funding? If we were to, dosh out the money county to county, it would be about 170, 180,000 per county. We could do it by that. It's the simplest way, but perhaps a more creative way is to look at an algorithm that would include things like the county, it would be nice to think that every county would get at least one project, but that beyond that, we take into account the county's population, its geographic size, its tribal makeup. I personally feel passionate about a sense of reparations that we can all make in terms of an awareness of who our tribes are and what does that mean, how are they involved, how are they at the table. The overall proposal strength is going to be paramount. Get yourselves a good proposal together. We'll help you when the time comes, not with the minutiae of writing a grant, but we'll be providing workshops on grant writing. And again, arts organizations can buddy up with you as artists. The likely longevity or the sustainability of the project beyond the grant activity period. Think, what I create, could this be replicated in another community? Could it be something, could it become a gold standard or a benchmark for a project that another county struggling with the same issues can use over and over, or be adapted in small ways to be relevant and meaningful for those communities in other areas? And then options of cross-county collaboration and mentoring. I love that idea. Again, just think back to that Yuba watershed map and the idea of so much of the Sierra Nevada, which runs so much, the length of California. That's one mountain range. How many counties? That's a wonderful example of a regional fuel for fuel is not the word we want to use, but inspiration for a project. So there's one other thing. This map follows 2020 census data. Some things have happened since then. So, for example, we drove through on our way up to Lassen and Modoc. We drove through. It was between Plumas and Lassen, wasn't it? We drove through the city of Greenville. Did it burn down last year or the year before? Last year. It was devastating to see it. I'm sure many of you have been to Paradise. We'll be going to Paradise. Is it tomorrow or the next day? Yeah. What we found was absolutely extraordinary in this city, in this small city, like Nevada City or Grass Valley. It's been burnt down completely. Whole neighborhoods, like ash on the ground. And in the middle, we found, it was the most amazing thing. We found, what do you call them?
The spot where all the trailers were.
Where all the trailers, we found these incredibly brightly colored trailers where a few people that had lived in Greenville before had refused to leave and had set up trailers. And, one was making tacos and burgers and selling them to anyone that they could. The other one had planted this incredible garden and painted their trailer and had public art all over it. You couldn't drive past it. It was so beautiful. It was like the symbolic idea of a village green around which a community gravitates and communes and invests in one another. It was like Greensville's new village green. It was extraordinary. It was the beginning of a new city, and art was absolutely a part of it. So I loved it.
There was a burnt tree in the middle that is painted all around, so they did all these art projects attached to this tree. And the area where they actually occupied originally was a residential part of the neighborhood, so as part of this, Greenville actually,
Speak up, Virginia.
as part of this, Greenville actually looked at how their community was situated and took this opportunity to actually reconsider where their downtown would be. And so, again, this larger element of looking at where we're going, the long term, and how are we getting there, and what are those steps? Think about this, you know, as things are changing.
Do not let the California Healthy Places Index get you down. Just don't. Just refuse to get, just don't do it. Damn it. You know, just start thinking of ideas, start mobilizing, start talking to each other. We'll help you connect those dots. When we produce the guidelines, we'll have conversations with you about how you can make this work, you know, with your narrative, etc. So, yes, at the back.
I'm wondering, is this in conjunction with any other grant programs? I'm thinking of like agricultural grants. Being that we're out in the woods, a lot of our artwork seems to find its way outdoors. And so I'm wondering, are there agricultural grants that kind of follow these same?
The answer is yes. I mean, there are, and sometimes as an arts leader, I'm so aware of everything that I do not know. I know there are incredible opportunities for artists, and in fact, more and more so, that come from other departments and other units of government. I just don't have that list with me now, but you can Google it. You know, Department of Agriculture, Parks and Recs, all of them. There is a movement towards putting artists to work and making sure that artists are paid to create awareness and opportunity, especially in rural America. So I think it's out there. So I encourage you to go and just like have an incredible amount of fun on a computer and just find out some of these other opportunities that they definitely exist.
Thank you. I think that, like, to just kind of piggyback off what you were sharing about this village that, you know, popped up, it's like, the question is, who are we? You know, we're in this time of great change and great awakening, and it's like these old systems and these constitutions and all of these things, like, we're questioning. And so, who are we? Why do we want to come together? And we explore this on Sunday, this Sunday, if all y'all want to come to Rebel Market, and there's about 50 vendors in there that are sharing all of their magical gifts, artists, creatives, innovators, change makers, and we're playing in that village experiment to reawaken that life. So if you want to come Sunday, I'm happy to share, but we're doing that in social experiment, so please come. It's at this a resiliency hub that catalyzed during COVID, and we really want to tell the story of that and how it all began, and it goes back even further. It goes back to like the Grass Valley Group and these tech centers and these large spaces, commercial spaces that are available now for us, and they're open. And if we can come together as a we to create a new, I don't even want to say institution, but a community, a collective, a cooperative of artists and change makers with Indigenous wisdom at the core, and honoring that we have spaces to move into. So
I love it.
104 New Mohawk. 104 New Mohawk.
Has everyone given us their email address?
We will be sharing the slide presentation.
Exactly. So, yeah.
My question is about collaboration. I think Circle is a well-suited organization for the kinds of areas that are being funded for. So when we talk about the Yuba River watershed, you mentioned that there are several counties that it runs through. I wonder, is there opportunity for organizations from each of those counties to collectively apply for a larger grant, perhaps?
Absolutely, and it's one of the questions we're asking ourselves. Probably we'll want, among a collaboration or among a partner, there's usually one lead applicant. That's what certainly California Arts Council is always asking of us. We will often apply in partnership with other organizations, entities, and groups of artists. but we'll be the lead partner. So it would be a case of you reaching out to those organizations and entities that are, you know, down the hill from Nevada County and still within the watershed. A person that can help you with that is David Reed at Yuba Sutter Arts Council. He's our equivalent down there. And finding out from him who he connects with, like we do with you here. Does that make sense? Yeah. So, but you probably already have all those contacts across, you know, you do, of course. Duh. Anyway, so the kinds of things we're asked, we need to know from you now, like, what is the smallest grant, the easiest to get, smallest grant that would make sense that you could create change from? Like, is it $5,000 for a month-long residency in collaboration with someone who's going to give you space and equipment or something? Is it not 5,000 but 20,000? And does the $20,000 bit give you the capacity you need in order to partner with? Okay, I'm going to tell you a story. When we were in Lake County, wasn't it? We met the most extraordinary mobilizer who was from the what tribe beginning with H? Can you remember? A beautiful multi-syllabled tribal name. And her, she was incredible. She was called Ida. And she basically masterminded this fabulous mural that is now in Upper Lake, on the edges of Lake, in Lake County. And this mural implied her entire tribal family coming together to seek justice for Vanessa Nico, who had been murdered. And it was a 5-year project that resulted in justice for Vanessa. It was a huge, essentially a mini movement through the emergence of this one mural, which is now sort of like in perpetuity on the side of a public building. And that's a very, very beautiful example of how public art manifests as social justice and a movement, and implied many folks working together. I asked her, sorry, you know, but I need a price tag. How much did it cost you? And was everyone paid? And she said $20,000. So now that really helped us. That was something that I heard. So, you know, that's really helpful. So you tell me, for a major project, what are we looking at? What kind of size grant should we be looking at for a sort of, you know, regional project versus a local project versus let me say we have close to 3.4 million to disperse to all 19 counties. It's not nearly enough. It's not enough money.
Out there and there's a lot of
Exactly.
this person got a ton of them, so.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Remember too, that once you start seeking, the way we managed to raise so much money for the project that you were speaking of, Al, is because we applied to the California Arts Council for the most competitive grant they had. It was $150,000. It took weeks of writing this particular grant, and it took us confirming partnerships with UC Berkeley, Sage Hen Creek Field Station, Truckee Donner Recreation and Park District to begin with, but then bringing along multiple other partners in order to leverage that seed fund, the 150, in order to find the next 150 and the next 10,000 and the next 20,000. That's how it works. So you get one grant, you immediately seek matching funds from elsewhere. It's likely that we will not insist upon matching funds. We want to make it easy, but for perhaps some of the larger ones, we might encourage you to.
And an investor at Burning Man will pay $2 million for our car. Awesome, all different.
What's that again?
And an investor at Burning Man would pay $2 million for an art.
I know.
That just is not generative. And it, you know, it employs an artist. And then it gets hidden away, you know, until the next Burning Man and like. You know.
It's sort of the antichrist of the California Creative Corps, isn't it?
Yeah.
But still fabulous.
And awesome. And
Eliza, I just want to introduce some more people that joined us here on Zoom.
I almost forgot we have this amazing group on Zoom. I don't want you to go, any of you, without us having got a picture, because tomorrow we've created a Facebook page, and we're gonna be creating an Instagram site that's dedicated. We also have a website that's up already that's changing as the days pass. So we really want a group picture. So do not go away. Give us 10 more minutes, okay? Okay, so we'll have to be very quick now with our.
Yes, so just wanted to announce that Amanda Pauletti, she's here from As If Artist Studio in the foothills in Grass Valley. And we just also had Barbara Burge join us, Chair of Arts Council of Placer County.
Thank you. That's great.
Thank you all for being here.
Hi, Barbara. Great to have you with us. And great to have you too, Amanda. We're going to be hosting one of our creatives meetups at As If in December. So we hope that you'll go. They're just about to launch open their small works show for Christmas, which is great. Are there any questions that are coming up in the chat in Zoom?
Yeah, so the Zoom participants, if there's any questions or comments,
It'll be very quick.
yeah, be very quick,
But
but you can send your questions in the chat.
Yes, and even if we don't have time to answer those questions today, it's the questions that are actually really important for us, because it pushes us to consider them.
Another thing that was useful in some other counties is, if some people already had ideas of projects that they're sitting with that could be beneficial, given what you've heard tonight. Throwing it out, because there are people that might want to collaborate with that or be involved. So just feel free with.
Are you already thinking of projects? Sally?
Yes. I don't actually know how to actually phrase this, but I feel that I want to devote more time as an artist. I've been an administrator, but I've got ideas for the grants or for grants and for employing artists. Not sure how much I want to spend time administrating, but if I would do that, I would want to be reimbursed.
Yeah.
So I think that may reflect what other people are thinking in the room too, is that we need people who are artist administrators. That we talked about this at the other meeting. And I'm just wondering how that fits in with the grant projects.
To me, this is one of those questions back to California Arts Council, because on the one hand, this is one of those unique opportunities. California Arts Council simply doesn't have a history of giving money directly to artists to pay them. This is such a beautiful opportunity for artists to apply directly to this fund. But as we're seeing, especially in the rural northern part of California, artists are sometimes lacking in the capacity to engage in the way that they want to manifest and they need to manifest. So we all have heard of the overhead myth, and certainly Nevada County Arts Council, where we are one of a minority of county arts councils that is not funded by its county government or city government. So we live in a constant state of resisting scarcity mentality, which is why we go for crazy big grants like this, because they're just exciting. Arts organizations very rarely have enough money to survive, to administer the amazing work that they do. And there's a recognized need to fund administration. It doesn't go into an empty well. We so respect that. And I need to be having a conversation with California Arts Council in terms of what that would look like for a partnering organization. So we recognize how important it is. Yeah.
Do they have guidelines in the grant on like how much can go towards administrative overhead? Or is that something you're right?
They're looking to us to create the program guidelines. So right now, this morning, we did some research, and I have the contact information for every head of every other administering organization in California, of which there are 13 of us. I'm going to be doing some serious benchmarking. I think that we are the only region that is conducting a listening tour. And as I said to California Arts Council on the phone earlier today while I was standing in line to vote, and I had time to speak with California Arts Council, I said, why would we think about putting together a program that would serve 19 diverse communities without doing a listening tour first. So I'm now going to be, as we begin to conclude our listening tour, I'm going to be in touch with all the other people like me across the state and finding out from them how their program guidelines are shaping up for their communities. And we'll probably be comparing and doing some benchmarking and thinking how can we adapt the best of for our rural community, given our artist population and who we are. So it feels like it's time. Michelle, did you have something?
Yeah, I was just gonna offer, and I know you're very aware of this, but I think as you consider how to set up the guidelines or even the application, I think, you know, it's really disheartening as an artist to go to a website and feel intimidated by the opportunity. There are a lot of more equitable grant giving processes that are available now that actually enable people to, you know, it's less about personal opinion qualifying someone's artwork and more about the impact of the project, you know. So I just wanted to put that out there. I know that's already on your minds, but I any way that we can stop it feeling from like a tax form, hallelujah.
Absolutely love it. This came up last night in Yuba Sutter. The dignity of the artist. How can we preserve the dignity of the artist through this program? How can it be reflected in the way that we ask artists to apply for funding? I, as an arts administrator and arts leader, often feel stripped of my humanity as I'm applying for these kind of state and local funds. It's terrifying. I'm putting myself on the line. I don't want artists to feel miserable, and Nevada County Arts Council feels a strong responsibility towards you all. So we'll do our best, but we'll hold that sense of dignity for the artists in mind. Jenny, you're going to be the last one, then we're going to gather for a photograph.
Quickly, just the idea of having a communication tool to see what we were cooking on, to see who may want to collaborate.
I'm just wondering if you have a device, or if we could start cooking up a device for people who may want to put some ideas out there, and we can get a chance to see what they're working on and say, hey, this is our idea, let's put our heads together. A way for us all to communicate from this point forward, and kind of like what next steps as we all are understanding HPI and all that has been thrown out tonight.
Exactly.
Yeah.
How about something, would something like a Facebook group? We have a Facebook page, but it's the whole 19 counties, but with our county in mind, we could create one, and I will suggest this to other counties. So for example, I know that both Placer County Arts Council and Sierra County Arts Council are on the call right now. And what we'll probably suggest to our partners, those agencies, is that they create some kind of wonderful, crazy group with, you know, like an open forum for communicating ideas and connecting with each other. Sounds great. Thanks, Jenny. Yeah.
And if there's any other listening meetings, like do it another one. Something.
Yes.
Could we please, because I know no one in here is not gonna really understand it, because there's so many minds involved in the creation of it, which is a part of the show, that it is a naval institution of government in the first place. So, like, could we focus much more on individual? Because like I have 15, 20 solid ideas that hit every single benchmark, but don't carry any of the narrative components of the propaganda that the state wants to create with its funds. It's all really good stuff, but it's not great propaganda for the state. And so I don't know if that's not a part of the program, then I guess I don't have anything to offer or in terms of grant proposal, but if the grant proposal is more abstract, would that be beneficial to have the creativity of people that are creative show up in a creative way during a listening?
Yeah, so
I mean, like,
yeah. No, I love it. I love it. And also knowing that Sierra County Arts Council and Placer County Arts Council is, I'm slightly speaking across counties here as well. I think there are going to be many things that take place in different communities that are specific to that community. So we would, I was just, Patrick, who's with us today on Zoom, we were homing in on some extraordinary areas of Placer County today and just having a brainstorm about them. And so many things became, you know, came up. I think that kind of element of blue sky thinking, I hate the phrase, but you know what I mean, where everything's allowed is very, very important. It's part of the creative process. So we will do that. I will just say, this WPA thing, the inspiration that it afforded this particular program in part, I happened to buy 3 books on the WPA last week because I felt very undereducated about drawing possible projects to inspire you all. And so I bought these 3 books, and then I saw that 2 of them had been introduced by someone I know very well called David Kippen, who was the chair of education and theatre at the National Endowment for the Arts for many years, and who lives in California. And I called him over the weekend. I said, David, you're in such trouble. We're going to have you lead it's going to be challenge engaging theatre and literary people. You know, what kind of projects can we put out there? It's a chicken and egg thing in order for them to be able to grasp and then fly on their own. So he said, oh, great, let's have a Zoom call for the whole of the upstate California, where we just talk about literature and theatre and blow some ideas around. And I said, well, only if you promise to find me someone who can do that for music and for dance and, you know, et cetera, et cetera. So lots of ideas in the work, and I really encourage you not to be put off by the data, but nevertheless to be thinking about what is at the heart of this. I mean, we've been given some good clues. Now it's up to you to start like mobilizing around those clues. Now it is time to gather for an incredible photograph. Thank you all so much.
Thanks.
Everybody for joining us on Zoom.
Thank you for all the time and energy that you put into collecting that data, because it's really important, because it showed all of us in our reactionary and the things that was like in this experiment and these things that needed.
Oh,
Thank you.
It's